Joker said in The Dark Knight. And here we go. Wait, let me plug out my phone, make sure nobody calls me. Before I get to my main topic, everybody knows I'm a movie buff. Speaking of The Dark Knight. And man, this weekend is funny, man. I saw two of my favorite black male actors in a film, but sadly, one of them was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in his career, and the other one is one of the best movies I've ever seen in his career. Start with the bad. Me and my girlfriend saw Will Smith's movie, Gemini Man. Man, I would rank that as probably his second or third worst movie he's ever made. Worst movie he's ever made. Hold on a second. Let me turn on. Yeah. It's only one or two movies I can think that Will Smith has ever made that were worse than Gemini Man. That would be After Earth. The movie he did with his son was horrible. And possibly The Wild Wild West. I think even The Wild Wild West was better than Gemini Man. But yeah, Gemini Man, it was just, I'm not going to go into lengthy detail, but it was just a bad movie. I mean, it had great, special effects and stuff, but visually it was a very appealing movie. But in terms of the actual story, the plot, it was horrible. On the flip side, everybody should know I'm a big fan of Eddie Murphy. Man, me, my girlfriend, my brother, and his wife went and saw Eddie Murphy's new movie called Dolomite Is My Name, which is actually based on a real life comedian and movie actor named Rudy Ray Moore. Rudy Ray Moore. And his alter ego was Dolomite. And man, that movie was hilarious. And it was inspirational, man. Because I think most of y'all should know, have been following me for a long time. Before I got into this whole dating coaching thing, my main passion was the entertainment industry, and more specifically, writing screenplays and filmmaking. Man, that movie made me want to go out and make a movie tomorrow, man. That was a really good movie, man. It was basically about how Rudy Ray Moore just, in real simple terms, just believed in himself. I know you hear that phrase a lot, and it's gotten to the point where it sounds kind of corny and cliche. But a lot of times, man, that's what it takes to succeed, man. You just got to believe in yourself, man. And that's one of the best movies I've ever seen that falls under that theme or that category of just believing in yourself. Is the story of Rudy Ray Moore, man. I mean, he just, through pure hustle, man, made himself into a top, what's known as a B-list. There's a term in Hollywood, like you're either an A-list movie star, like a Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or an Eddie Murphy even. Those guys are considered A-list. Then there's a tier below that are often referred to as B-list movie stars. And even some people would go as far as say there's even what's known as C-list movie stars. But Rudy Ray Moore, in the 1970s, man, he became one of the top B-list black movie stars in the country, man, just based on sheer will and hustle, man. Yeah, I would recommend. It's only playing in a select number of theaters. It's going to be on Netflix beginning with October 25th. So if you can't see it, I would prefer you see it in a movie theater for the reaction from the crowd. But if you can't see it in a movie theater, check it out when it comes to Netflix on October. I would rank it as no lower than Eddie Murphy's third best performance ever in a movie. I think the only two performances he's had that's better than his performance in Dolomite would be Coming to America and The Nutty Professor. But other than those two, man, I would rank this as no lower than his third best performance ever, man. It is really a good movie. Trying to think anything else in the news that, oh, man. Well, I don't even talk about that. I get pissed off. But I was going to talk about the black woman who got shot in Fort Worth, Texas. You know, I had a frat brother that got murdered in Fort Worth, Texas. That's one city I will never be moving to. Huh. Shit. Anyway, that's another story for another day. Trying to think anything else in the news other than our crazy president. Okay. Now, again, as always, my followers always make me aware of certain podcasts and live streams that either A, number one, when my name is mentioned, or if my name is not mentioned, where the subject matter or the commentary that's discussed is either directly or indirectly related to stuff I've either talked about in my books and or talked about in my Blog Talk Radio podcast, or more recently my YouTube video podcast. And so this falls under the second category. It wasn't something where my name was directly mentioned. But it did cover territory that I've covered honestly a number of times. Going back to Blog Talk Radio in my books, most notably The Possibility of Sex and the Beta Male Revolution. The subject is a woman more likely to submit to you romantically and sexually if you have money? That's the subject of these two videos. One was, I think it started with the young brother who I affectionately call Lil Bruh C Boogie. He did a video called, I don't have it in front of me. I want to say it's called Money Doesn't Necessarily Buy You Submission. Money doesn't necessarily buy you submission. Where C Boogie pointed out that money can contribute to one degree or another to the success of a relationship, particularly a long-term relationship. And of course, I've said that myself when I talk about my 4 roles, which is fuck buddy role, long-term boyfriend / husband role, pay for play, and purely platonic friend. I've always said that when it comes to, marriages and long-term romantic relationship, money does have its place for sure. And C Boogie, rightfully so, pointed that out. But he was basically, I'm assuming, based on how he expressed himself, it seemed like he was responding to something, some argument that somebody else, some other podcast or YouTube personality has presented, where they were trying to say, I don't know this for a fact, but it sounds like C Boogie was responding to someone making an argument that game is not important at all. That it's all about money. That if you have money, you can get women to fall in line with your program. It has nothing to do with game. Which, if somebody did make that argument, again, I don't know for 100% fact if someone made that argument, but I know just from what both combination of what I've observed myself over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, as well as more so what my followers have been sending me links to. It seems like right now, mainly among what I would call the black sector of the manosphere, more so than just the worldwide manosphere, the black sector of the manosphere, there seems to be this ongoing debate and argument about, there's like this big divide among men in the manosphere. People call them. And here's the main argument that's going on right now in the manosphere. There's a few brothers, black men, who are YouTube personalities and podcasters that are basically going after dating coaches like myself and other similar self-improvement gurus. And what they're basically making an argument is that either one or two arguments, if not both, that game is not the number one thing that's important to attracting women, or at minimum, that game shouldn't be the number one thing that leads to attract. Matter of fact, if you remember just 2-3 videos ago, remember I was talking about some feedback I got from listeners? I can't remember which video, man. It was within my last 2 to 3 videos. I mentioned how I had a guy who gave me some feedback on a video I did, and one of the arguments he was presenting was that he basically said, slightly paraphrasing his words, he said, Alan, I have a problem with the idea of a man being able to get women in bed just based on a combination of his looks, his persuasive and seductive charm, and his overall sex appeal. He said, I have a problem with that, man. I think in order to get high quality women in bed, i.e., on that scale from mythical scale from 1 to 10, 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s. That's what most guys consider, quality women, at least in terms of beauty and sex appeal. This guy argued, he said, in order to pull 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, you should have to be a man that has a high degree of career success, a high degree of financial success, and just an overall high degree of achievements and accomplishments. He said, I don't feel like a man should be able to pull a 7, 8, 9, or 10 just simply because he's a combination of good looking and seductive and got a nice physique and got a persuasive and charming mouthpiece. He's basically like, I don't feel like a guy should be able to pull women based on that. And that seems to be the argument that's going on in the black sector of the Manosphere. Is that I could, call out a lot of names. I'm not necessarily going to do that right now anyway. But yeah, there's certain people who are making an argument that, again, either that game is not as important as money and status and career success and power and influence, or at minimum, that it shouldn't be. But the reality is, game is both are always going to have their place. To me, it's not so much an issue of exclusively this one factor or that factor. I think depending on what your relationship is with a woman, both are going to come into play. I wouldn't say you can totally exclude the importance of a man's level of career success and financial success. That would be a misnomer, to totally exclude the significance or importance of those factors. But at the same time, it is definitely unrealistic, bordering on delusional, to discount the importance of game. I would say, particularly when it comes to casual sex, for casual sex. Now, I've always pointed that out. Again, I once again, I bring up my 4 roles. When it comes to being a woman's casual fuck buddy, it ain't nothing more important than game. I'll tell you that right now. It ain't nothing more important than game, with the exception of if you tricking. That's the only exception if you resorting to tricking. I mean, basically, that's the only 2 ways you're gonna have regular casual sex with a woman. Is either if you got game or if you tricking. So when it comes specifically to casual sex, unless you plan on tricking, it's all about game. Like, I'll speak for myself. Just about every woman I've ever had casual sex with, it was because of a combination of my looks, I gotta turn off my computer, I'm sorry. I'm starting to get Facebook messages. Pretty much every woman women I've had casual sex with, it has been because of a combination of my looks and my mouthpiece. If I had to narrow it down to just two things and two things only, it was a combination of my looks and my mouthpiece. And between those two, I would say more so my mouthpiece, which is the slang term for your overall like conversation skills. Combination of your verbal communication skills, your level of confidence, your level of persuasive charm, charisma, all of that combined together would be considered your mouthpiece. That's the main reason I've had casual sex with women, is because of my mouthpiece, and I would say right behind that would be my looks. So that's number one. If you're discounting the importance of game as it relates to short-term, non-monogamous casual sex, you're delusional. Flat out, you're delusional. And I would say to a lesser extent, even when it comes to pulling a wife, a fiance, or a long-term girlfriend, game is always going to have its place. It might not be as important in a long-term relationship or marriage as it is for casual sex, but it's still important. It's never totally unimportant. Because see, the reality is this, man. If percentage-wise, if 90 to 99% of the reason why a woman is with you is simply because of how financially generous you are and how willing you are to buy her things, materialistic items, and pay her bills, then guess what that means? I think most of you should know what that means. That means she's only going to stay with you as long as you're the highest bidder. I talk about that in chapter 5 of The Possibility of Sex, when I talk about materialistic gold diggers. There's a term that's become very popular, one of the few terms I didn't myself create or popularize, but there's a term in the Manosphere known as monkey branching. I want to say Rollo Tomasi is the main one who made that term popular among maybe a few other people. Monkey branching. What is monkey branching? Monkey branching is basically, let's say you got a woman who's a gold digger type. Let's call her Linda. And Linda hooks up first with Daniel because he's making $50,000 a year. And she'll stay with him as long as she has no better offers. But as soon as she meets Brian, who's making $75,000 a year, she's going to monkey branch to Brian. And she's going to stay with him as long as she got no better offer. But as soon as she runs across, Timothy, who's making 90 grand a year, she's going to monkey branch to Timothy. And she's going to stay with him as long as she ain't got no better offers. But as soon as she runs across David, who's making 125 grand, she's going to monkey branch to him. That's what women do. If 90 to 99% of the reason why a woman is with you is pretty much almost exclusively because of how much money you make, and more importantly, how much money you spend on her, then she's only going to stay with you as long as you're the highest bidder. The one who's the most financially generous with her. But the minute, I can guarantee you, the minute that woman meets a guy who she finds just as physically attractive as you, if not more so, just as sexually appealing as you, if not more so, and most importantly, that makes more money than you and is more financially generous than you, she's going to leave you. Man, that happens in like the world of like the entertainment industry and media among big baller types all the time. I've seen that happen with my own eyes, man. Shit, that happens all the time, man. When you're dealing with women who are materialistic, they always going to go for the highest bidder. That's what makes them a gold digger. Gold digger types are always going to go for the highest bidder, man. So for those men who are making this argument that money is so important, to me, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I would never want 90 to 99% of the reason why a woman is with me because of how much money I make and or how financially generous I am. Because again, you ain't gonna have, you can't buy loyalty. You can't buy loyalty. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fucking fact. You can't buy loyalty. I mean, y'all know some of my stories. As you know, for me to repeat it for the umpteenth time, but when I was between roughly the age of 17 and 37, I had sex with somewhere between 35 to 40 women that were either married, engaged to be married, or had a long-term boyfriend. Do you know in at least 3/4 of those women, they had a husband, fiance, or boyfriend who was making more money than me? In some cases, way more money than me. Probably the most notable case is a story I've told at least a half a dozen times in previous videos, was when I was living in Los Angeles. I want to say this was like 1995. In 1995, when I was living in Los Angeles, there was a woman she was a graduate student at UCLA. She was Caucasian, blonde Caucasian baby, fine. If I say so myself, she was on any guy's 1 to 10 scale, she was at minimum an 8.5. I always say on most guys' 1 to 10 scale, she would probably be considered somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9. She was a badass white babe. She could have been like a Playboy centerfold. That's how bad she was. Nice body, small waist, round ass like a black woman, decent sized tits, long flowing blonde hair, cute Barbie doll face. She was a looker. I would say of all the women I fucked in my life that had a husband, a fiance, or a long-term boyfriend that was making more money than me, I would rank her number 1. At the time I was fucking this woman, her fiance, who I didn't know about, if you remember the story, I didn't know about that until about the 3rd time I fucked her. The first 2 times I fucked her, I actually thought she was single. She had never mentioned that she was engaged. And then starting with the 3rd time I fucked her, I saw this big ass diamond ring on her finger. And I could tell she meant to take it off by her reaction. She had meant to she basically wanted to hide it from me. And she had forgot she still had it on. And I remember I looked at it, I said, damn, I didn't know you was married. She said, no, I'm actually engaged. And she went on to tell me about her fiance. Her fiance at that time, this was 1995, he was like, he did something to do with computer software, like a junior Bill Gates type of guy. She said at that time, he was making about roughly $900,000 a year, which of all the women I fucked who were in a relationship, I would say that was the wealthiest of any guy. Yeah, he was making about just under $1 million a year. But yet, I was able to fuck this woman anytime I wanted to. And here was the kicker, if you remember the story also. She ended up telling me, she said, in terms of pure lustful attraction, she wasn't even attracted to white guys. She actually preferred brothers. Yeah, like I wasn't the first brother to fuck her. I think I was probably like the 4th or 5th brother to fuck her. She loved brothers. Sexually, she liked brothers. But she was engaged to a white dude. And she admitted to me that, again, what I was talking about earlier about, she basically admitted that 95 to 99% of the reason she was attracted to her fiance and why she was going to marry him was almost solely and specifically because of his money and his love for, like at that time, she was driving a Porsche 911, which is a pretty expensive car. He had bought her for her. But what the point I bring up the story is what I said. Money don't buy loyalty. Because if his amount of money bought loyalty, why was she fucking me anytime I wanted to? I mean, literally, I could call up anytime and say, I want you to suck my dick or I want to fuck you. And she would pretty much be like, okay, where we going to meet? I had this babe on my beck and call, man. I literally could fuck her and or get her to suck my dick pretty much anytime I wanted to. And this chick was engaged to be married, man. And she went on to tell me, she basically was like, most of of her girlfriends, she said the guys that they were either married to, engaged to be married to, or in a long-term relationship with, they were with those guys primarily because of their money. But they was cheating on them behind their back. So all you guys making this money argument, again, I will never, and C Boogie did a good job of this. If you listen to C Boogie's video, he didn't totally discount the importance of money. He said at different points in his video that money has its place. And I would echo that times two. Money definitely has its place. Again, particularly when it comes to marriages and long-term romantic relationships. In other words, I would never send out the message that you could be just a broke, unemployed, damn near homeless bum and still be successful with women, particularly if you're talking about for long-term relationships. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, there are some men that are what's known as house husbands. House husbands. Man, there are some men that are known as house husbands where their wife is the breadwinner and they are basically a house husband and stay-at-home father. And they basically do all the chores, all the cooking and cleaning. They take care of the kids. Yeah. So yeah, there are guys who are house husbands, particularly in this day and age. But see, I don't want to get too lengthy because of time constraints. But see, the reality is, man, I have to keep repeating. One of the reasons why women fought for the second wave of feminism and specifically to gain more employment opportunities and more earning opportunities is so they wouldn't be in a position where they were forced to have to marry men just because of their money. See, before the 1960s, man, a lot of women married men who they really weren't physically or sexually attracted to simply because that was their only option for having a decent lifestyle. But see, now that women make their own money, not all women, but a good number of them do, most women don't need men for financial provision. Now, that's not to say, of course, we still have women who are gold diggers in society, and materialistic type women. But those are women who are usually lazy, and they just, or most of the men who they really want to date treat them just like they sluts and hoes. So they look for, a naive beta male to treat them like wife material. But a lot of women in today's society, man, they got it so going on themselves in terms of their level of education, their career status. They don't need no man for money. Like, I know a lot of black women who I ain't personally know personally, that I went to like college with. I would say probably 75-80% of the women I went to college with, man, they don't need no man for no money. They're making their own money. There's women I went to college with that are making anywhere from, I'd estimate, anywhere from 75 grand a year to over 200 grand a year, 200,000 a year. They don't need no man for no money. Hair getting out of place. I know people still saying, Alan, come home. But yeah, the ongoing argument, again, what I've surmised in the black manosphere right now is this argument of game versus money. Game versus money. And to me, it's a bullshit argument. First of all, what is game? Because I know a lot of people define that differently. What is game? I'll give what I would say is the general definition, then my own Alan Roger Currie definition of game. General definition of game is based really anything that you have going for you that helps you get the women you want to get in bed. That's game. And there's different variations of game. For example, if your looks is the number one thing that helps you get the women in bed that you want to get in bed, that means you got a lot of looks game going for you. That's what would be known as looks game. Money. If you're a master trick or a master sugar daddy, and it helps you get the women you want in bed, that means you got strong money game. If you, your intelligence, there's some women who are what's known as sapiosexuals. Sapiosexual, that means they get turned on by a man's level of knowledge, wisdom, and overall intelligence. Then that means you got intellect game going for you. Basically, in the general definition of game is really anything that helps you get the women you want to get in bed. My more specific definition of game is when you have the ability to persuade a woman to adhere to your program as opposed to you adhering to her terms and conditions or her program. That's what I personally define as game. It's not just when you're able to, say, have sex with a woman, but more specifically, when you're able to get a woman to adhere to your terms and conditions of a romantic or strictly sexual relationship, i.e. your program, versus, because if there's one thing I've always said is that at any given moment in time, you're doing one or two things. Anytime you're having sex with a woman on a regular or semi-regular basis, you're doing one of two things. Either she's having sex with you on your terms and conditions, or you're having sex with her on her terms and conditions. It's one of the two. There's no in between. Either a woman is adhering to your program or you're adhering to her program. And to me, game is when you're able to get a woman to adhere to your program. Because as I pointed out, when you hear me use my term alpha male respect, you've often heard my longtime followers have often heard me say, man, I would rather, in most instances, I would rather get no pussy at all than to get what I call doggy treat reward pussy. Doggy treat reward pussy. What is doggy treat? Well, some people call it pity pussy. I think C Boogie, he calls it charity pussy. Basically, if a woman is giving you some pussy, which is a good thing that she's giving you some pussy, but if a woman is giving you some pussy, but she's the one who's dictating the terms and conditions of your sexual relationship with her, then to me, I categorize that as doggy treat reward pussy. Like, for example, let's say a woman says, I'm going to give you some pussy, but you got to treat me to a 5-star restaurant, dinner at a 5-star restaurant every Friday. And you say, okay, I'll do that. And you treat her to dinner at a 5-star restaurant, like a $7,500 meal, and in return, she gives you some pussy. Possibly, and you getting some pussy, but you're getting pussy under her terms and conditions. See, that's what I call doggy treat reward pussy. That's doggy treat reward pussy. That ain't alpha male respect pussy. So anyway, without getting on a lengthy segue, that's my definition of game. Game is when, for example, if I meet a woman and say my objective is short-term non-monogamous sex, and I meet a woman who lets it be known that her preference is for long-term monogamous sex, and I'm able to persuade her to engage in the type of sex that I want to engage in, as opposed to me pretending that I want to engage in long-term monogamous sex, then that would be an example of me using game. But it's cracking me up that you have guys trying to undermine the validity of game. And I have to ask myself, what world are you living in, man? Let me just get shit hardcore real, like I like to get at times. Just hardcore real. The only motherfuckers that are really gonna come down hard and try to invalidate game is motherfuckers who ain't got no game. Period. End of story. The only motherfuckers who are gonna try to totally devalue and invalidate game is motherfuckers who ain't got no game. You ain't got no game. Meaning, when I say you ain't got no game, remember, if y'all read my book, The Beta Male Revolution, of course, I start out with my island analogy. That's where I was kind of the starting point of my book. I do this island analogy. What do you notice about that island analogy in my book? I stripped away the importance of money. I basically, in my fictional hypothetical island scenario, I created a situation where every man on that island had equal access to resources. So in other words, there was no man who was wealthier than another man or had more power and influence status than another man. Everybody, all men were, in terms of things like access to resources and material possessions, all the men were on an equal level. That's part of my fictional hypothetical scenario. All the men were on an equal level. So the question I have for you, you guys who criticize game, if you're on that fictional hypothetical island, how would you fare with women? If you knew you couldn't use wealth as any kind of extra advantage for you, or power, power and influence, or status, social status as an added incentive or reward to offer to women, how would you fare? How would you fare on that island? That's what I want to know. How would you fare on my island that I present in the Beta Male Revolution? How would you fare on that island? In other words, if the only way you were able to pull women was with either your level of physical attractiveness, your level of intelligence, your sense of humor, your sense of charisma and persuasive charm, your conversation skills, verbal communication skills, i.e. your mouthpiece. If those are the only things that you can rely on to pull women, how would you fare on that island? How would you fare on that island? See, a lot of guys use money and status and shit and material possessions as a crutch when you don't have no game, man. I know a lot of guys, like I talked about this in a video, I think in either 2017 or 2018, because one thing I realized from working in the entertainment industry is that, honestly, and I could call out names, but I'm not, but there were certain celebrities that I used to think, when I was young, I used to think all celebrities, male celebrities, had game. Only to realize from being around certain celebrities and being in that industry, a lot of celebrities don't have no game. A lot of the popular male celebrities you see in movies and on TV shows and shit, and even a lot of professional athletes, man, they ain't got no game with women. Their game is money and material possessions. And that is literally almost like their whole game. It's just wealth, offering women materialistic gifts, financial favors. To me, man, if that's all you got to rely on, you in trouble, man. Because I would say 9 times out of 10, that woman gonna cheat on you. 9 times out of 10, that woman gonna cheat on you. If that's all you got to offer is things like materialistic possessions and financial favors, that woman gonna cheat on you, man. That's why I say even in a marriage or long-term relationship, you gotta have some degree of game. It may not be as important in a marriage or a long-term relationship as it is for casual sex, but you still got to have some degree of game. That's what, man, again, you can't buy loyalty, man. You can't buy loyalty. Money, if money was the key to getting a woman to be loyal to you and submissive to you, shit. What man with a decent amount of money would be complaining about women? I mean, let's just call it like it is. What man who's making a decent amount of money would be complaining about women? We all know from social media and YouTube and the Manosphere in general, I know guys who are millionaires that are complaining about women these days. There's motherfuckers making 6 or 7 figures who are whining and bitching about women. So that by itself lets you know that money is not the number one key to attracting a woman's loyalty and the number one key to getting a woman to be submissive to you. Because if it was, all guys would need to do is make 60 grand a year, 75 grand a year, 90 grand a year, 125 grand a year, 150 grand a year, and then all their problems with women would be solved. And we all know that ain't the truth. There are men who are what's known as BDSM cuckolds and polyamorous cuckolds that make far more money than their wives, fiancés, or girlfriends. But yet they're submitting to their wife, or they're submitting to their fiancé, or they're submitting to their girlfriend. How do you explain that if money is the key to loyalty and submission? That's what most BDSM cuckolds and polyamorous cuckolds are, men who are essentially sugar daddies. They're paying all their wife, fiancé, or girlfriend's bills. They buy them lavish gifts all the time, but yet they are that woman's bitch. Come on, man. It's ludicrous to even try to suggest that money is the number one key to get. Again, man, I can't tell you how many women I fucked that were either married, engaged or married, or had a boyfriend, and their husband, fiancé, or boyfriend was making more money than me, and in some cases, way more money than me. Like, I'm talking about, like, I might have been making 30 grand a year, and their husband, fiancé, or boyfriend was making like 150, 200 grand a year. So what's the point of having money if it don't keep your wife, fiancé, or girlfriend loyal? If I can come around with a strong mouthpiece and pull your bitch, what does money mean? What does money mean if me just being a reasonably handsome guy and a guy with a strong, seductive mouthpiece could just come along and get your bitch to suck my dick? What does your money mean? Drops mic. So I was just saying, wrapping up, man, money has its place, particularly if you want to raise children. Money definitely has its place. If you want to live in a high quality neighborhood, money has its place. And if nothing else, if you just want to be in a position as a man where you don't have to depend on somebody else to pay your bills. My main motivation for wanting to make a nice amount of money is not to pull bitches, but is so I won't have to depend on anybody to help me out so that I can, live a decent life. Because I've been in that position before in my 20s and 30s where I had to depend on like my parents, or depend on the generosity of some women, or depend on the generosity of some friends. I've been in that position before. So I know how it feels, and I didn't like it. Like, I've been a woman's kept man before, if you know what that means. That's the male equivalent to be a woman being a sugar baby. I've been a kept man when I lived in Los Angeles. So, man, all you undermining the value of game is motherfuckers who don't have no game. Believe that shit. Believe that shit. And in my Patreon exclusive portion, one of my Patreon subscribers asked me, Alan, sometimes when I feel like women are acting defiant or disobedient or just not really fully adhering to my program, should I ignore them until they get their act right? And if so, how long should I ignore them? And I'm going to address that in my Patreon exclusive portion. Oh, one other thing I want to refer you to is an article I wrote on 4 types of submissive women. I wrote an article on the Negro Manosphere. And one of those 4 women is women who will fake submission. See, that's a lot of people don't realize. There are some women that will fake for a number of days, a number of weeks, a number of months, even a number of years. They will fake, basically, like they're being submissive to you, just to exploit you and use you for access to your financial resources or material possessions. I'll put the link in the comment section. Anyway, join me in my Patreon exclusive portion for further discussion.